Hi, this is Tom and Jesse Talk Movies. I'm Jesse.
And I'm Tom.
Before we begin, we'll be talking about Jaws, which is very exciting. The first time watch for me. I know you've seen it multiple times, I think.
Yes.
Before we begin, a lot. Before we begin, if you have anything that you'd like to discuss, complaints, concerns, hopefully not complaints, contact us at programs@cshlibrary.org. We would love to hear from you. So Jaws, we're going to be talking about Jaws. We're concluding the summer blockbusters.
Yes. Last time we did Batman Forever.
Batman Forever.
And this time we decided to, why not Jaws? Summer,
this is
sharks, ocean, water.
Quite a different different tone to this movie.
Yes.
So, did you want to give a very brief synopsis or information about it?
Everyone knows Jaws, of course, directed by Steven Spielberg, starring Roy Scheider, Robert Shaw, Richard Dreyfuss, and many others. It came out in 1975. This was a huge movie back then. Really ahead of its time, I think. I feel like this is a movie that everybody has seen. You've only recently seen
minus me, everyone minus
yes. So of course we're like, we got to discuss Jaws, and you had not seen it, so why, perfect opportunity. This is a movie I grew up watching. It was always on in my house. This is my dad's favorite movie. Whenever it's on TV, he stops and watches it. So that, of course, has rubbed off on me, and I love the movie. Seen it a bunch of times, and again, it's like one of those movies. No matter how many times I do see it, like I always appreciate it. I'm never bored with it. I'm a big fan of this movie. And I think just before we get into like what you thought, because everyone is dying to know your first time watching it, would be like, I didn't like it. Like, what?
Suspense is killing you.
This is a movie that, while also legendary, was a huge box office, success, making close to 500 million. This came out and it was like, it scared the heck out of people. I would hear stories from my dad about like, his friend wouldn't want to go to the beach the next day, or whether they were out in the Hamptons or wherever they were, Montauk, and they're like, oh, I'm not going in the water. It's like, dude, we're going up to our ankles. Yeah, no, didn't you see that movie yesterday?
But that's the effect that this movie has.
That's great. And this was one of Spielberg's first movies, not his first movie. That was Duel, the one with the 18-wheeler truck, also a great movie.
Yes.
And this is iconic for the it being Spielberg, big, not a huge budget, only 9 million, but there was a lot of behind the scenes stuff. It was mostly shot on location in Martha's Vineyard in Massachusetts. It was the first major motion picture to be shot on the ocean, and it's known for its very troubled production. They used the mechanical animatronic shark that was giving them so many issues that they went over budget by over 150 days. Spielberg thought, this is it for me, and I'm done.
Hollywood again.
And it's crazy because now he's an A-list director. Everyone knows Steven Spielberg, right. So it really worked out for him.
Sure.
He was just afraid he was never going to work again. And this is based on the book by Peter Benchley. I've actually never read the book. I hear it's excellent. Spielberg directed it. He did not write the script though. And then it's also famous for its musical score by John Williams.
Yes. And they would go on to work together many times, him and Spielberg.
Yeah.
Indiana Jones.
Yep. Very iconic composer. So, and this came out in June of 1975. So, right at the height of summer there.
Absolutely.
Jesse, what'd you think of this?
First
time watch.
I was absolutely blown away. I thought it was mesmerizingly good.
Awesome.
I'm not even so much... The whole shark fear of the water thing wasn't what sold me, and I think maybe that's why I've been so hesitant to watch it, because like I'm not typically one that's a fan of giant sharks and monster movies, and but this for me was just, it's like something that you have to see just as a means of like it's so deftly put together. I think Steven Spielberg, his stamp is everywhere on this movie. You and I, quick backstory if you're unfamiliar with it, but Tom and I had met when we were studying film together, and I think that inherently, once you kind of take some film courses, you evaluate movies differently. Your movie going experience is totally differently, where you can't like just turn your mind off. And I'll speak for me. Normally, when I see something really bad, I'll go, oh boy, that stands out in a negative way. But there were so many elements of this film that stood out in a positive way, just in terms of camera shots and camera movement and score. Everything just came together so perfectly. And there were times where I was really just blown away. And I'm like, I get why this movie is renowned in the way that it is. I think it was shot incredibly well. And to say that it was shot in 1975 is almost, I take a step back because I'm like, I don't believe it.
Doesn't look like it, yeah.
And you and I are big proponents of animatronics and not so much
practical effects.
Practical
you know,
effects.
Can appreciate that.
This was pretty much before any of the CGI stuff started coming in, the computer generated imagery. But one of the reasons why Jaws holds up so well, I think, is because it's a giant mechanized shark, and it's not something that was done through computer graphics. I think Alien, which was 1979, holds up so well because the alien was a giant sort of animatronic or puppet type thing. So, and that's the stuff that holds up so well.
If this were to be made now, it would be a CG shark fest, and we've seen how many? Every time a shark movie comes out, and there have been hundreds since this, and it's no matter how can you not compare it to Jaws?
Right. And analogously, I think if you look at it, say you try to make it relevant to today's standards. Well, Godzilla vs. Kong, which I know you recently saw, I didn't. I mean, I look at the trailers and I'm like, okay, Kong looks good and Godzilla looks good, but it's still very patently CGI. And this is like something that came out in 1975, and I'm just sitting there watching this, and I'm like, this is so believable, so viable. I was just so impressed from that aspect of it too. I would say see this just from the perspective of if you're not into the whole shark attack thing, which is admittedly what had kept me from seeing this for so long. The main characters, the secondary characters, everybody's so interesting. Their motivations are so interesting. The story is like worth the price of admission. Just even if you're not so much a fan of the shark, which they really build up the drama so well that by the end of it, you do become a fan of what's going on. The way that the script was written and the way that the characters interact, you become so invested in them. You actually care what happens to them. You absolutely, you're like, oh no, please don't get them. You're hoping Jaws doesn't get any of the main characters.
May I ask a question?
I want to hear some of what you could say. So then I'll bounce off some of what you have to say.
No, I completely agree with everything you're saying. This is an iconic film, and I want to go back to what I was saying, where when every year a shark movie comes out, there have been so many shark ripoffs, Jaws ripoffs, and most of them, they don't even come close to something like this. One that I would say like my second favorite shark movie ever, which I actually think is quite creative, is Deep Blue Sea from 1998. Okay. I see you rolling your eyes.
Moving on here.
I thought that was an excellent movie, but again, all CG shark stuff. Right. It was, a good story, but every shark movie is just like, okay, people go in the water, they get killed, and it's like, just don't go in the water. What's so special about Jaws is, even though it's the first of its kind, it was done the best, and it still holds up. Spielberg carefully made this film, and I know he thinks, he was going through all this production drama. It's a good movie first, it's a good drama with characters and everything, and then it's a shark movie with action.
And I should have listened to you, because that's what you tried to sell me the movie. Yeah, you tried to sell me that it's a really good character.
You don't have to be. I tend to be into like disaster or like animal attack like movies, and most of them are very, very silly. What Jaws gets right is that it focuses on the main characters first. We have great actors, but also really well-written characters, and each and every character has a purpose. Whereas how many of these movies, like there's that movie Shark Night that came out 10 years ago, and it's a bunch of like college kids getting killed by sharks. Okay, anybody could do that. Right. What's so smart about Jaws is that it feels very much like an adult film. It's not gimmicky. It's not trying to impress you with its special effects, even though it does, but it's not trying to get you to jump out of your seat. That's not the focus. We care about these characters first, and it takes place on Amity Island, which is kind of like a nice little beach town. Looks like Martha's Vineyard, of course, being shot there, but Amity, I think, is kind of taken off of maybe Amityville a little bit. I don't know. I know this was
get some Montauk vibes too.
Right. It's very much. I mean, this feels like a town out East Long Island, and so right then and there, the setting is perfect. And just the way it starts, Chief Brody, played by Roy Scheider, who
excellent.
Excellent.
I mean, he is excellent.
just excellent. You get into him and his wife and his kids, and they all have characters. Like his wife, I love the wife in the movie. She's never in on the action. She's not on the boat with them at the end. But to me, I care about her just as much as everybody else. So we really get a nice introduction to Amity Island and, what is life here? It's obviously a beach summer town, but these people, they live here all year round, which I think is kind of cool. I always wanted to live in a touristy place, but like live there in the winter when that's going to be kind of cool.
Which kind of what like Montauk is, by the way.
Yes. I think it's just really cool. We're dealing with this sheriff, and he's a really strong character. He's really good at his job. Everybody, I think, respects him. And then he has to deal with the really trying to think of the pain in the butt mayor, played by Murray Hamilton, who is
I just
love phenomenal.
I love as a character.
Phenomenal in this film. And his character is just as important as Chief Brody. All these secondary and characters are like, wait, why do we care about them so much? Well, that's Spielberg. So, and I think Spielberg is really good at his characters, regardless of his plots. He always wants you to get on board with his characters. So, we have the setting, we have the scene. It's like, okay, great. We're sucked into this world now. And then a shark shows up. And we just see how a town is dealing with it. And it plays very realistic for a movie about a giant killer man-eating shark, which on paper sounds ridiculous.
And I thought that also is probably one of the reasons why I hesitated, because I'm like, the premise of this sounds ridiculous. How are you going to make something that's mature and not like just a very...
I mean, they've made movies like this. I mean, like in 1997, there was Anaconda with John Boy and Jennifer Lopez and Owen Wilson. And it's like, look, I like that movie, but it doesn't hold a candle to something like Jaws. And again, it's all because it's a drama first and an animal attack horror second. And just like the dialogue and the character interactions, it's just like you could have a sheet of paper with like, okay, requirements for a good film, and every box is checked off here. From the characters to the cinematography to the score, it does everything perfectly. It's one of those movies that's so hyped up that I'm like, yeah, it deserves the hype.
And seriously, I walked away when the credits rolled. I walked away thinking, like, I get it. Like, I get why this movie is as iconic as it is.
Yeah.
And I'm such a contrarian in so many ways, where it's like I want to pick things apart.
Me too.
And I would have very, very few, if any, criticisms about this movie. I just thought it was so well done. Did you have anything else to say?
No, I was just going to say, like, I think it's an excellent setup. It's a world, I think, it's easy for a viewer to get on board. And then as the film progresses, we start to deal with pushback from the local government, which I think is just brilliant. Murray Hamilton as the mayor is really like, no, I don't want to deal with this. It's whatever, Memorial Day weekend, 4th of July, I think. Yeah,
4th of July, you're right.
And it's like, no, we want people coming. This is a tourist town. We want the money. Yeah, but people are dying. Yeah, I don't really care. Stop talking.
Right.
And it's like, okay. But then we have the sheriff who's like, no, I am not taking this. This is my job. And he's excellent. And he was right the whole time.
Of course. And it was just, I just love that character of the mayor, because he's this avaricious. He's like, right from the get-go, you kind of know that something's up with him as a character, or there's going to be pushback.
I just love that they're like local town, like there's a town meeting about a shark. It's just, all stuff that sounds ridiculous, but when you're watching the film, you're like, this has no right being this.
And I love it. Right, you have that assembly, the town assembly.
It's very mature.
There's, they're having a conversation about how you're going to get the shark, and you have Quint's character, who
played by Robert Shaw,
who's
excellent actor.
Terrific actor.
The villain in From Russia with Love, 1963. Again, another iconic role. Here he is. And
he's fantastic. And I love when you have him in the assembly and he's kind of laying down, okay, I'm going to hunt the shark for you. But he's like, I have demands and I want $10,000.
Yeah.
And the mayor and some of the other people in power look at each other and they're like, that's not going to happen.
But this is who you need.
This is who you need. So going back to the character of the mayor, who I found fascinating, and again, every character in their own right is fascinating. Even the secondary characters, they all seem to have a purpose. There's no one that's a throwaway that you feel like, oh, this is superfluous. They don't need to be in the movie. And the way that he kind of economizes the time, it's like it's a 2-hour movie, but there's a lot that goes on in the process of 2 hours.
There's a lot of layers, and it's not just a shark is killing people. I mean, how the movie starts, there's a very clear first, second, and third act, and each act is interesting. And I think the pacing of the film is just spot on.
It's terrific.
The film sets it, you know, Spielberg clearly has an idea, and overall, it has a good flow to it. And I just love the ideas of like, okay, it starts out, you know, this is our setting, this is our introduction, we got a shark problem. Then it's like, okay, we got to gather a team of people. How are we going to deal with this? And then the third act, when they're on the boat to really go hunt the shark. Great.
It's like it's at a fever pitch. The tension is at a fever pitch. And Spielberg, like you'd said, is perfect at sort of establishing pacing. And from the opening scene, obviously, where you get the first snippet of the shark attack, and then shortly thereafter, you kind of get the introduction of the mayor. And the mayor wants to, you know, he pulls Roy Scheider's character aside and he goes, "Are you sure that was a shark attack?
Yeah.
You know, it could have been anything else." And of course, so then you have one of my favorite scenes in the whole entire film is you have the day after when Roy Scheider knows that something fishy happened, no pun intended, and he can't obviously say, well, this was a shark attack. So he's on the beach with his family and he's sort of tensely, you know, patrolling the area to see with all these people in the water, oh my gosh, is there going to be a shark attack or something? It's just the way that whole scene is filmed, like the very frenetic nature of the scene where you hear characters talking over one another. You have Roy Scheider's character, his vision is obstructed by like someone that's sitting in front of him. It's just everything that they do to amplify the tension.
The audience is I like when the audience is like this one character.
Right.
And it's like when he's looking and it's like, yeah, move, get out of the way. And then it's like when he sees like in that one scene, the school of bluefish, you're just like, oh, okay, it was bluefish, thank God, but no one's gonna believe me. How am I gonna get everybody on board? So it's really just this law enforcement versus the rest of the town, and you're on Roy Scheider's side.
Right, and you're just waiting. Well, when is everyone else going to acknowledge that there's a significant issue here? And this is what's so amazing about Spielberg, how deftly he sort of navigates this whole this crowd element. Like you said, the crowd is a character. When he's on the phone for the very first time and he's like being made aware like there was some sort of a shark attack, you have Roy Scheider's wife and his kids having a conversation in the background. So you get bits and pieces of that conversation. And that's sort of stuff that just lends to the unease as a viewer. It's like you're hanging on to every word extra closely because it's like, you know, you don't know what's going on. You need to know what's going on. And you're on Roy Scheider's side the whole entire time, like you said. How do you get everyone else to be on his side? Which was because you had someone like the mayor who was just his one purpose was to make money, and he said it outright. He's like, you know, this is the busiest time in the city, you know, the town of Amity this whole year. He's like, nothing's gonna get in the way of that. It was excellent. It was really excellent.
I'm really glad you enjoyed it. But just like, you know, in the beginning, I think what's really great is like a way to get your audience on board is by giving Chief Brody an actual character. So like, I love the scenes when he's at like the dinner table and his son is mimicking him. The plot is pretty thin, but Steven Spielberg does so much with the plot that you're like, oh, okay. It's a very inviting kind of film. And then one of my favorite scenes is in Act 3 when they're all drinking and they're on the boat.
Thank you for bringing that up. I wanted to.
It's iconic, and just they're drinking, they're getting a little silly, and I just love how like the camera moves. That stuff is so important for this kind of movie because you want to be able to bring your audience into this environment, you know, where you feel like, oh, I'm on the boat and I'm just watching these three grown men drink. And I like to see how they're all different, you know, from Robert Shaw and Richard Dreyfuss, Dreyfuss is great. He's like that nerdy scientist guy, and I think he's great. And they all three could not be more different, but they're all in that moment, they're best friends.
Oh yeah,
and I love that.
There's a camaraderie there that you don't think when you meet them, you think that there's no way that they're ever going to get along. And in that moment, when they're all kind of a little bit inebriated, they start telling stories with one another. One of the other scenes I love is when they start showing their marks.
Yeah.
I've been bitten by this. I fell here. And it's just so natural.
I love the story Quint shares. And like every time I watch the movie, I find myself getting sucked into, like, as if I'm a little kid around a campfire being like, okay, tell us more.
The way that the characters are humanized in this movie is what
they're real
reason
people.
Why it makes it so compelling. If, like you said, if this is like any other sort of disaster shark movie nowadays, there's not such an investment, I feel like, in that character.
Yeah.
I care what happens to these characters in the movie.
And that's what I think the director does so well, because if you look at all his, I mean, Spielberg has done so many other genres, and like look at something like War of the Worlds, the family unit is so important. And I think it's really, really something special when you have all this drama going around and you have a character, a family, like this one unit, and you're like, okay, I'm experiencing this as the audience alongside with the family. And that to me is the best kind of filmmaking.
Totally. And even it's so funny, because if this was done in maybe a different movie, like you talked about.
Yeah, this was done by like Ridley Scott.
It would never have worked.
No, it would not.
Specifically,
and today it wouldn't work either.
Oh yeah, specifically, and you're talking about Quint, how Quint has this revelation on the ship about. I mean, it's really a devastating story about how he was fighting in World War II, and his ship was sunk, and he was kind of being surrounded in shark-infested waters, and he basically saw these sharks start to eat up his platoon members and military members. And like it's weird, because up until this point, you really don't get much about Quint. Quint is he's very sort of
he's quiet and outcast.
Right, and you don't get a whole lot of backstory. And then all of a sudden, there's this exposition dump, which normally would never work in any other movie. But because he's revealing it at the time, where he's kind of loose already because of the alcohol, it just felt so natural that he would share that story at that time. Nothing about the characters' interactions felt unnatural. I like what you said about that little glimpse that you get of Roy Scheider's character with his son and his wife at the dinner table. They're just these little interactions that really humanize the characters, and you feel so much more invested in them because you see these little glimpses.
Exactly.
So I thought it was excellent. I really thought it was
enjoyed it. And like I said, I mean, how many shark movies have there been, or like crocodile movies, and everything tries to. Even if you look at posters of other movies, they all try and rip off Jaws to an extent, and I don't think there will ever be another type of Jaws.
And this speaks to the bigger picture of like why horror movies have such a deficiency. And you're the horror movie guy, so unless it's something like a Hereditary, or it's like most horror movies you're getting into nowadays, it's like you just want to see heads get cut off, but it's like you never get invested in any of these characters, and they're goofy and they're not supposed to be. But it's like the most memorable horror movies that I've seen in the past 10 years, Hereditary being one of them, it's because there's such a focus on character development, and like you lose sight.
Because, I mean, look at that movie, The Meg, that came out with Jason Statham. The complete opposite of Jaws. It's a killer shark movie. It's a giant shark. Okay, cool. One-dimensional characters, very flat acting, corny dialogue, over-the-top moments. Whatever Jaws did, it's like the people of The Meg saw Jaws and were like, we want to do opposite. Okay, it was a serious one, let's make it goofy.
Right.
And then, like, you see The Meg and you're like, yeah, that's just, there's nothing entertaining about that. I like Jason Statham, but
not has its place.
Right,
the movie has its place.
I thought it was interesting. You and I, the other day, we had talked about if they were to remake Jaws, which will happen probably because that's what happens.
Nothing is sacred in Hollywood.
Nothing is original anymore. It's either a remake, reboot, which is a reboot is just something that takes place in the same universe as the first film that kind of continues the first story, even if they did many sequels. Like look at Halloween.
Soon to be
prequel.
The Exorcist.
The Exorcist again. Like, why are they?
They're out of ideas. They just need to make.
I'm not against remakes, but I would like to see some fresh material. But we were just for fun, if they were to remake Jaws, who would we cast? And I think we came up with some good ones. The characters themselves are so iconic. No one will ever top Roy Scheider, Robert Shaw. We came up with some interesting ones. We said, just for fun, who would play Chief Brody, Roy Scheider's character? I think we agreed Oscar Isaac.
Right, and we did read that on the website.
We did.
We should. I wish we had the website written down. We would give credit. Mm-hmm. That was not our invention, Oscar Isaac. Right. But we agreed with it.
I was thinking it was funny because I was leaning towards I want a good actor because this is a movie where we can cast A-list stars because of material, and Chief Brody is such a strong character. Mm-hmm. So I felt like we need somebody who's really good. I had at first said Ryan Gosling because I could see him playing that kind of gritty character, strong, but can also be compassionate.
He doesn't have the range to me.
You don't think so?
He's anything I've seen him in. He's.
I can see him. Yeah, I can see him freaking out on the beach.
And,
So. Okay. So we said Oscar Isaac was good, but then we said for Richard Dreyfuss's character. I thought of, even though I'm not crazy about him, I could see him doing it. Chris Pratt from Jurassic World.
Excellent.
Kind of that quirky science nerdy guy that everyone would be like, oh, we love him.
I think that's an excellent casting choice.
I had said for the wife, and I'm being dead serious when I say this, Lady Gaga, because I think she looks a lot like Lorraine Gary, and she's also a phenomenal actress. Like if you look at Stars Born, you can see she has the look her.
She does.
She could totally do it. We said for playing the mayor, Murray Hamilton was the original actor. Michael Keaton. Can we say that wisecracking, egotistical,
lay on the charm when he needs to,
right. And talks out of the side of his mouth.
You could be a casting.
And then who did we say for Quint for Robert Shaw's character? Oh, I had said I would like Adam Driver.
And I love it
because he is such a great actor, and
he's like a chameleon in so
many one of my favorite. Him and Michael Shannon are I like those actors because they take their work seriously but not pretentious, where they really get into the character.
Intense.
And they're intense actors. So I could see I would say Adam Driver would be my pick. I could see him the mutton chops.
Oh yeah, absolutely. He'd pull it off.
I think he'd be great. And I don't know about director. I don't know if there was a certain director I would pick. We didn't really discuss that, but I would say you would need a good director. And the score has to be the same. You cannot change the score.
Yeah, and that's tough. That's just tough.
Yeah, just get the music sheets from John Williams and give it to somebody else. Do exactly that.
Who would be a capable director? Because I feel like if it was you couldn't give this to a Ridley Scott.
Christopher Nolan, it would be 2.5 hours. We would see the shark's dreams, and it would be ridiculous.
2.5 hours on Ed. I'm telling you, that's not 3.5 maybe.
But
the shark would get into the water until the last half.
But Jaws is iconic. They went up to 4 Jaws movies. It was Jaws 4. I actually like the sequel. Roy Scheider, his wife, everyone returns for the sequel. I think it's a pretty good sequel. Is it as good and suspenseful as the first film? No. But I think as far as sequels go, if you're going to continue life on Amity Island, I feel like this was pretty good. In the sequel,
you've got me interested. I
would say purely watch it for if you like the characters, they all return. It's not a necessary movie because it's another shark. It's more of a body count because it focuses on a bunch of teenagers. They're out on yachts and little boats getting attacked by the shark, and Roy Scheider has to come and rescue them. So it's more fun. It's serious, same kind of tone. They do a good job. It feels pretty consistent. Of course, the first film is way stronger. And then, you got 3, which is the 3D one that was from 1983
Mr. Dennis Quaid.
Dennis Quaid. And is it Lou Gossett Jr.? Yeah, he's in that.
Right.
And then the 4th film, Michael Caine and the wife.
Yes.
She's the main character. It takes place in the Bahamas. Wow. And it is atrocious. So that's Jaws.
It's Jaws.
Glad we watched it.
I loved it.
I think next up, our next topic, I think August is going to be M. Night Shyamalan.
Yes. The Village.
The Village.
Followed by The Sixth Sense.
Followed by The Sixth Sense.
Yes.
And you've never seen The Village, which
I have not.
I that was always one of my favorite movies of his. It has been well over 10 years since I've seen it, so I'm very excited to see it. The Sixth Sense I saw in theaters. I was 10. It scared me at the time.
Yes.
Obviously not
Excited to
anymore.
revisit that for Mr. Bruce Willis.
Yes, Bruce Willis is in that.
A-lister.
Yeah.
A-plus lister.
And M. Night Shyamalan's latest movie just came out called Old,
Yes.
which I'll discuss a little bit. I did see it. I enjoyed it overall. And he's a lot of people have compared him back then, not so much now, to Alfred Hitchcock, like the latest master thriller. Whether that's deserved or not, we will discuss it.
Cool.
So
May I make a quick question, comment, gentlemen?
Oh, we have hi.
Hello there.
We have an audience member.
We have a guest.
Hi there. Sorry, I had to turn my camera off because my internet was.
We just got to turn up.
We're gonna turn up the volume here.
Okay. Oh, there.
My internet was unstable, so I had to go off camera. But I have to tell you, you totally convinced me to watch this movie. I had like Jesse, I was not gonna do it because of the whole horror thing, and I know that's Tom's thing, but I did not realize there were so many layers to it.
It was great. It's an interesting character study more so than anything else even.
Yeah.
I went into, like I said, I went into it with the wrong idea that it would just be solely focused on the shark, but it's just so fascinating with these three very diverse characters.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm so glad you delved into that because I had no idea. And I'm not a horror film fan. Right. So I think I'm actually going to dip in.
But I also feel like this is one even maybe horror fans, it's beyond horror fans, where people just fans of movies in general kind of just.
Well, when you explained that it was a really good drama as well,
yes.
And to make it relevant to current times, so if you equate the current red tide situation in Florida to the local mayor doesn't want to cause a fuss because it's going to turn away tourism, but it's a recurring problem. So it's kind of interesting that just kind of occurred to me when you mentioned that, like the blowback of dealing with a major issue that's going to turn away the tourists.
And it's funny, not to name names, but that mayoral character, you look at him and then, I mean, things just pop in your head. It's like, oh, this person reminds me of so-and-so. It's like, that's the way the character is written, where it's so sort of slimy a character.
It's a great character.
Yeah, I can't wait. Now I was actually took a minute to Google to see where I could find, get my hands on a copy of Jaws. Because I did not know that there was so much more to it. So
it's deep. It's a deep movie. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, the fact that, thank you so much I was actually going to chime in earlier, said, forget spoilers, just lay it all out for us.
Oh, no, we respect the spoiler. We're glad that you kind of logged on for a few minutes.
I'm so glad.
Absolutely. And definitely loved Sixth Sense. So I don't know.
I'm excited to rewatch.
I'm so excited to watch them both. It's been a long time.
Yeah.
Right. Now, Jesse, have you seen Sixth?
We'll say goodbye.
We'll say our goodbyes. Thank you, everyone, for watching it. Hope you enjoyed what we had to say. Sure. We will see you next time to discuss M. Night Shyamalan's work and many more.
Yes. Thank you for watching.